Good morning, everyone. We'll call our meeting to order. First item we have is Senator Hawk. He has some shadows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have three outstanding young men from Clay Center High School. Their teacher, Laura Pullman, does an outstanding job with them in their government class. So I'd like them to stand up as I introduce them and wave. Lane Musselman, Ryan Benfer, and Alec Tipsworth. Could you give them a welcome to our Senate committee? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, I have some pages here that I'd like to introduce.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some pages here today, and they're students at Holy Name Elementary School in Kansas City, Kansas. And I'll have them stand up as I call their names. So, Gabby, would you stand up? These are all 8th graders, and Gabby's planning on going to Miege High School next year. And Thela, and she also is planning on going to Miege next year. And Addison, another Miege, and Adrian Ward High School, he's off to next year. So they're 8th graders at Holy Name in Kansas City, Kansas, and they're paging here today. And fortunately, we're not all going to be on the floor, so this is your opportunity to get to see them. Thanks, guys, for being here.
Next, we'll have bill introductions, and I have a bill 22 RS 3210, has to do with CAPERS, Kansas Public Employee Retirements. I'll make a motion. Second by Senator Fagg. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Also, we have Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here for a bill introduction. It's 22 RS 3195. It's aligning with the governor's recommendation to add the Department of Correctional Security officers and, in the same bill, the Wildlife and Parks law enforcement officers from CAPERS into the KP&F retirement system.
I have a motion. Senator Hawk, second. Senator Kirshen. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
So, thank you to committee.
Committee will start on budget reports, and the first one we have today is the Commerce Committee, and we have Senator Erickson. Welcome back to Ways and Means, Senator. Kansas Department of Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So good to be back with Ways and Means. I know you all have missed me, and I'm glad to see Senator Fagg has graduated from the kid table in the back. So it's my pleasure to report on the budget for the Department of Commerce. We'll start with fiscal year 2022. The agency estimates revised 2022 expenditures of $110.7 million. This is $6.6 million SGF, which is an increase of $3.9 million or 3.7%. Part of the adjustment includes $2.4 million for the EDIF fund, Main Street program, Rural Opportunity Zone, and community development. The increase was partially offset due to phasing out of the Kansas Health Professional Opportunity Project, which was $2.9 million. Additionally, the agency requested some money for Job Creation Program Fund. This was decreased by $1.4 million because the State Finance Council appropriated additional SGF money to replace the JCPF dollars used from COVID-19 relief. So the governor's recommendation, the governor recommends expenditures of $136.2 million, including $26.6 million SGF. This is an increase of $25.5 million, including $20 million SGF above the agency revised estimate. The $20 million SGF is for the Moderate Income Housing Program, $5 million from the JCPF for Economic Development, and the new federal grant to assist in reemployment of former inmates, which was $500,000. And the Senate Committee on Commerce concurs with the governor's recommendations for fiscal year 2022, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the senator on 2022? Seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For fiscal year 2023, the agency requests expenditures of $105.8 million, all from special revenue funds, which is a decrease of $4.9 million or 4.5% below the 2022 revised estimates. I do need to point out that there's an increase of 10.5 FTE positions due to the enhancement request we'll get to here in a second. Major reductions in the request include the elimination of $6.6 million in reappropriated SGF monies, $2.5 million in EDIF reappropriations, and $4.8 million in debt service for the Impact Program service bonds, which were paid off in 2022. These decreases are partially offset by 13 enhancements, requests totaling an increase of $6.9 million, and again, the 10.5 FTE positions. These are predominantly focused on the KIT-KER programs, additional staff for Office of Innovation and Broadband Development, workforce development investments, and investments on data tracking and analysis. And then it added back in $4.3 million in JCPF dollars due to the exhaustion of SGF dollars. The governor recommends expenditures totaling $339.6 million, adding $205.1 million SGF for 2023. This is an increase of $233.6 million, including $205.1 million SGF above the 2023 agency request. This increase is attributable to $195 million SGF for university matching grants, $10 million SGF for higher education grants, $27.9 million from the JCPF for economic development, and that's raising that cap from $3.5 million. $125,000 for the executive director for Advantage Kansas, and further extension of the Federal Pathway Home to Grant. Recommendation also includes an addition of 1.0 FTE. So the Committee on Commerce concurs with the governor's recommendation with the following adjustment. The committee recommends adding language to increase the amount reserved for the National Institute for Aviation Research from $20 million to $35 million SGF of the $195 million appropriated for the university matching grants for FY 2023. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Senator Erickson. Questions? Senator Hawk.
I just wanted, and welcome back again. We missed you. And you would be at the big kids table too if you were still here.
Thank you.
But I'm particularly pleased to see us having the broadband development. I'm on the Spark Connectivity Committee, and it's really good to have that resource available as we look at extra resources for broadband development. So I'm happy to see that in this budget. And I'm also happy to see that economic development piece. I know we've allocated some of that money initially to the NIAR aviation project, and several of us are on the higher ed subcommittee, and I'm eager to see what we might be looking at in terms of the other regions as certainly a key way to spark our economic development in the state. So thank you for having that in there, and I certainly agree with the governor's budget on that and what your committee's done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did the agency talk at all about on the broadband, what specifically they're doing? Are they just, pushing money towards AT&T and a Cox, and are they getting any of that money out there to the rural broadband areas?
I do know they did talk about expanding broadband access to the rural areas. We know that that's a much-needed infrastructure upgrade. The specifics, I will look to JG. Do you recall anything in addition to that? But that was talked about in committee.
Because I've heard we're sitting on a lot of money there in Commerce on that broadband, and I just don't, for me personally, I don't think they're moving fast enough for the rural community. But so maybe that agency can provide me with some more information.
I will tell you, Senator, that we are having a hearing on broadband and the funds that are and how they're being used in committee tomorrow. So we will be taking a deeper dive on that.
Okay, I'll try to catch that. Thank you. That's helpful. And then just curious how your vote came out on the NIAR additional money in your committee.
I will say, Senator, that there was overwhelming support for the NIAR program. There was more concern with the overall amount of $195 million, what those matching grant programs would do. There wasn't a lot of specificity. So the vote for the overall on that enhancement was 5-3, but I don't think that was reflective of the support for the NIR program. I think there was universal support for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Fag.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. This is kind of along that line, that NIR funding. How'd they decide to go 20 million to 35 million? Was there any kind of, what was the thought process on that? An extra 15 million?
That is a great question. Thank you, Senator Fag. The reason for the increase for 15 million is to expand that program. They want to eventually have a Salina program in Topeka. And that centers around having the availability of runways that can deal with the planes that they're bringing in to refurbish and revitalize and get those back out in service. And so the 15 million is to add a couple of hangars to Salina in order to expand that program.
Thank you.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I make a quick response to Senator McGinn's question about broadband?
Sure.
Just to let Senator McGinn know and the committee, the Spark Connectivity Committee, along with the other subcommittees on Spark, had their orientation in the last week and a half and met, and there are proposals out there, and I'm suspecting a lot of them will be rural, that will come in, and then we'll look at priorities for that. We haven't decided how much money would go into the connectivity or broadband, but I certainly personally will be suggesting that we look at a lot of rural projects. And in fact, the 60 million that Spark put in last year, 50 million of that went into shovel-ready projects. And a great deal of those were rural projects, that some in my own district that I went to the rollout of those. And I agree with you totally that we need to really push our infrastructure and with broadband expansion. And I think there's, I predict some consensus on that in the Spark group.
Senator McGinn.
Well, that's good, and I'm anxious to see the committee meeting tomorrow, because it's my understanding that we've had this money over a year, and I don't know that it's getting pushed out the door very quickly, so.
Senator Hawk.
Are you referring to the 5 million that went into, well, the Spark, that 60 million has been spent from last year. The 5 million that goes into transportation is transferred into the broadband department and commerce. And there's, and I think that's planned out with, there's a total of 85 million that they've looked at over a 10-year period of time. So I think it will be merged into what we're using federal dollars for, so we get the biggest bang for the buck.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is probably for the department, if there's anybody from the department here, but of their 323 FTEs, are they full? I mean, do they have any vacancies in that?
I believe they testified there are some vacancies. I could not tell you exactly how many. So I don't see anyone from the department, but I would be happy to provide that information to you, Senator.
Other questions? I just have one. What is the difference between the matching grants for the 195 million and the university matching grants at 10 million? Why don't we just have 205? Is there, what's the separation there?
That's a great question. And the explanation that I was given is the 195 matching grants, they require a private one-to-one match that the 10 million do not necessarily require. And that's why they're separated out.
Okay, thank you. I guess the other question is, I point out to committee, there is a minority report on the next page, if you'll look at that. And I'm going to suggest that the committee at least look at all these when we get ready to work the bill. So you have any comments on that?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do think it is worth looking at the minority report. There was some concern over just the specificity in the $195 million. That's a lot of money, and we weren't provided with a lot of details and very little oversight of those monies. And so there was broad concern over that aspect of it. So I do think there are some things worth considering on that, but the majority of the committee felt like it was worth the investment to go ahead and make that recommendation to this committee. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, Senator Erickson, thank you a lot for being here today, and thank you, your committee, for their work on this. We appreciate it. Pardon me? You have a question? Senator Petty.
Thank you, and thank you for mentioning this minority report, but I was going to ask Senator Erickson, so I notice it says delete 20 million SGF for enhanced funding for moderate income housing programs. Was there any justification? I mean, we have such a housing issue in Kansas as it is, and the housing report that came out certainly supports investment. So do you have any thoughts on that particular issue?
Yes, and the senator that requested that made it very clear that they support this program. The concern was with the timing, that there's very little time left in this fiscal year. So the motion was actually made to put 10 million in for the remainder of this year and then carry 10 million over and then recommend that Ways and Means put that in as a recurring line item rather than every year having to do that. So that it was not a statement on supporting the program. It was concerned with the timeline and pushing that money maybe into the next fiscal year.
Okay, and so, but this looks like it's deleting all of the money for 22 and only putting 10 million in 23, but you're saying it was actually 10 million for 22?
And that was the recommendation, and it was not accepted. The committee ultimately felt like, and with input from the Department of Commerce, that they already have plans for the 20 million for this year. So it reassured the committee that it was not too tight of a timeline, and so that was ultimately, but by no means was it a statement on the validity or the need for that program.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? Thank you again.
Thank you, and thank you for indulging me to go first, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yes, thanks again. Senator Fagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move that the committee concur with the governor's recommendation of FY 22-23 Department of Commerce budget with the notation of reviewing the minority report.
We have a motion, we have a second. Second by Senator McGinn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll have the Federal State Affairs Committee, and Senator Hawk.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify that that motion included the NIR recommendation as a notation that they had
I believe you said, as
as a governor.
recommended, it's already recommended in there.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was considered in there.
Well, they added to 10, so if we need to, Stephen, do you have that? Are we okay the way we are? Do we need to make a separate motion to add the additional funding?
My assumption, it was in that motion. I just wanted to clarify that it was.
It's in there, okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, next we'll have the Kansas Lottery. The agency requests an estimated $375 million, all from special revenue funds. It's a decrease of $812,250 below the 22 approved amount. The agency estimates decrease in expanded lottery revenue from 4 state-owned casinos of $912,000 below fiscal 2022. The decrease is primarily attributed to the decreasing gaming facilities, manager fees, expenditures, which are proportional to the total sales and are paid to casino operators. The estimates for this expenditure was lower from the original estimate due to the unknown conditions and COVID-19 at the state-owned casinos. The estimates will be reevaluated during the subsequent revenue estimates. The remaining adjustments include an increase of $99,750, which is primarily attributed to an increase in ticket printing and shipping cost on the ticket sales for 2022. The governor concurs, and the Senate Fed and State Committee also concurred. Any questions on 2022? Seeing none, I'll move to 23. 23, the agency requests $376.4 million off from special revenue funds for 2023. It's an increase of $1.1 million above fiscal 2022 estimates. The agency estimates $38 million in lottery prizes paid by the state, which is an increase of $1 million above 2022. The agency requests additional increase of $104,728, all from special revenue funds. These adjustments primarily comprise increases in salaries and wages and expenditures of $377,928 and contractual services of $926,000. However, these increases are partially offset by a decrease of $1.2 million for capital outlay expenditures due to the purchase of additional lottery vending machines for fiscal year 2022 that does not occur in 2023. The agency also requests 93 FTE positions, which is an increase of 3 FTE positions. Governor's recommendation. Governor recommends expenditures of $376.2 million, all from special revenue. It's a decrease of $187,864 below the agency's 23 request. The decrease is due to the governor's directing the agency to use existing resources and vacant FTE positions rather than adding additional expenditures to support enhancement requests for 3 FTE positions. The governor's recommendation includes 90 FTE positions, which is a decrease of 3 FTE positions below the agency's 23 request. The decrease is due to the governor's not recommending the enhancement request for the additional 3 FTEs, and the Committee on Fed and State Affairs concurs with the governor. Questions? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have we purchased all those lottery vending machines? I know that was slowed down at one time, and just checking to see, because I know the revenue from that goes to fund our crisis stabilization centers.
Yes, they were all purchases, as it says in here, and they're in the process of deploying the last few machines.
And then I'm assuming then that that's going to generate the money we need for the crisis stabilization centers.
Well, depends on how many of them dollars you put in that machine for us, Tom.
Well, raise my pay and it'd make my day, and I would gamble more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the hope is that it will increase sales and revenue. Any other questions? Seeing none, I make a motion we accept the recommendation, the governor's recommendation for 22 and 23, second by Senator Fagg. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have the Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission. The agency requests $9 million, all from special revenue funds for 2022. This is a decrease of $3,457 below the approved amount. The decrease is due to $5,938 in salaries and wages expenditures, which is partially offset by an increase of $2,481 in contractual services expenditures. The agency estimates include 99.5 FTE positions. The governor concurred, and the Fed and State Affairs also concurred with the governor. Questions on 22? Seeing none, I'll move to 23. Agency requests $9 million off from special revenue funds. This is an increase of $11,898 above 22's estimates. The increase is primarily attributed to increase in expenditures for employer contributions for fringe benefits such as group health insurance. Also, the request includes 99.5 FTEs, which is unchanged from 2022. The governor concurs, and the Fed and State Affairs concurs with the governor. Any questions on 23? Seeing none, I make a motion we accept the governor's recommendation for 22 and 23. Second by Senator Fagg. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Committee, next we will have a hearing on Senate Bill 422, Appropriations for Fiscal Year 23, 24, 25 for various state agencies. Okay, we'll have to just be patient for a minute. We're waiting on staff, so. Committee will come back to order. We'll have our hearing on Senate Bill 422, and first off, we'll have an explanation by Amy Deckard. Committee, I might point out, in case you're wondering, these two bills that we're going to hear are the mega and the supplemental, so we're just activating them at this time. The supplemental and the mega.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for holding the committee up. You should have a bill explanation in front of you for the Senate Bill 422 and Senate Bill 444, which is the governor's recommendations. So this is for the combination of both the mega appropriation as well as the supplemental appropriation bill. So you have an ivory explainer in front of you. It does include the adjusted funding for fiscal years 2022 and funding for fiscal year 2023 for state agencies and capital improvements for a number of state agencies. The governor's recommendation totals $23 billion from all funding sources, with $9.3 billion for the state general fund for fiscal year 2022. This does increase total expenditures by $1.2 billion and increase the state general fund expenditures by $2.1 billion above fiscal year 2021 actual expenditures. Excuse me. The governor's recommendation for fiscal year 2022 is an all funds increase of $2.3 billion or 11.1% and an SGF increase of $994 million or 11.9% above the fiscal year 2022 approved budget. The increases are primarily attributable to adding $460 million off from the state general fund for the residential tax rebate, adding $332.2 million off from the state general fund for debt retirement in the Department of Administration, adding $20 million off from the state general fund for the Department of Commerce to expand the moderate income housing program, adding $731.9 million, including $375.4 million from the state general fund to the Department of Education. This does include adding $199.5 million off from the state general fund to eliminate the delayed state aid payments, adding $253.9 million off from the state general fund to eliminate CAPERS layering payments, and adding $336.5 million, all from federal funds for emergency school relief. On page 2, also includes adding $64.9 million, including $48.5 million SGF to the Department of Corrections. This does include adding $18.3 million from the federal ARPA funds for the 24/7 pay plan, adding $21.1 million from the State General Fund to restore the evidence-based juvenile initiatives funding, adding $6.7 million, all from the State General Fund for the Pathways to Success program, adding $18.1 million, all from the State General Fund for the Highway Patrol aircraft, deleting $184.7 million, all from the State Highway Fund, largely related to delayed construction of the State Highway 69, and deleting $72.5 million, including $173.2 million SGF to implement the revised human service caseload estimates, largely related to the extension of the enhanced federal medical assistance percentage match. Mr. Chairman, I'll move to fiscal year 2023, which is mostly contained in SB 422, the mega appropriation bill. The governor's recommendation for fiscal year 2023 totals $22.6 billion, including $8.9 billion from the State General Fund. This is an all funds decrease of $405.3 million, or 1.8%, and a State General Fund decrease of $423.2 million, or 4.5% below the fiscal year 2022 governor's recommendation. For state operations, the governor's recommendation is $6.7 billion. This is an increase of $84.8 million, or 1.3% above the revised 2022 estimate. This is primarily attributable to the Department of Commerce grant programs and enhancements, state employee pay adjustment, Department of Corrections pay plan and enhancements, partially offset by some one-time expenditures in 2022 and reductions in federal funding. For aid to local units of government, the governor's recommendation is $7.1 billion, a decrease of $207.5 million, or 2.9% below the 2022 revised estimate, primarily attributable to reduced education state aid and COVID-19 pandemic relief funding in the Department of Health and Environment, partially offset by increases to the Board of Regents for state student financial aid assistance and to the state treasurer to implement the proposed food sales tax elimination. At the top of page 3, for other assistance, the governor's recommendation is $7.1 billion, a decrease of $128.2 million, or 1.8% below the revised estimate for 2022, primarily attributable to the resident tax rebate, unemployment benefits, and the Department of Children and Families funding for the LEAP program, water assistance, and child care providers, partially offset by an increase for Medicaid expansion. For capital improvements, the governor's recommendation is $1.8 billion, a decrease of $154.4 million, or 8% below the revised estimate, primarily attributable to the accelerated debt retirement in fiscal year 2022. Mr. Chairman, I will move to page 5. There is some additional information about expenditures by function of government. Page 5 illustrates some information about salaries. The governor's budget does include additional resources for a general broad-based salary increase for fiscal year 2023. It appropriates $145.5 million, including $56.8 million from the State General Fund for a 5% state employee base pay adjustment. It would increase salaries for classified and unclassified employees in the executive branch, legislative branch, and judicial branch. Legislators and elected officials, teachers at the schools for the blind and deaf, and the highway patrol troopers would be excluded from the salary adjustment. It would be appropriated to and certified for distribution by the State Finance Council if approved. In addition to the 5% base salary adjustment, the recommendation does include $56 million, all from the State General Fund, to extend the salary adjustment for the 24/7 facilities where staffing shortages due to the COVID-19 pandemic have necessitated temporary pay increases. At the top of page 6, for fiscal year 22 and 23, the governor does recommend funding longevity bonus payments for eligible state employees at the statutory rate of $40 per year of service, with a 10-year minimum and a 25-year maximum. I would note that classified employees hired after 2008 are not eligible for these payments. The estimated cost for longevity payments is $2.9 million, including $1.1 million from the state general fund. Might note the governor has included some other salary adjustments. Those are noted in the table on page 6. Mr. Chairman, I would turn your attention to page 8. Just a chart with some other changes in expenditures from all funds and some comments concerning major expenditures. Starting at the top in thousands, so those include Medicaid expansion, the grant program at the Department of Commerce for the regents, Medicaid caseloads, and the judicial branch increases, as well as the aircraft purchases in 2022, which show as a decrease for the Highway Patrol in fiscal year 2023. I might turn your attention now to page 12 to note the governor's budget does include some revenue adjustments. For fiscal year 2022, the governor's budget includes transferring $600 million from the state general fund to the budget stabilization fund. Includes transferring $5 million from the state general fund to the job creation program fund, and reduces the transfer to the adjutant general state emergency fund by $8.6 million from the state general fund. For fiscal year 2023, reduces revenue by $462 million in the state general fund by the elimination of the state food sales tax, transfers an additional $31.5 million from the state general fund to the job creation program fund, reduces revenue by $10 million from the state general fund to provide tax credit for creative industries, eliminates the transfer from the Securities Act fee fund of the Kansas Insurance Department, reducing revenues by $5.1 million to the state general fund, and adds an additional $1.5 million in various other state general fund adjustments. Be happy to address any questions.
Questions for Amy? Senator McGinn.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand. I don't recall doing this before in bill form. Is this something new, or is it just something I'm forgetting about, or are you calling it something else?
Go ahead, Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Traditionally, we do have a bill hearing on the two governor's bills. The timing varies by year. This year, we're having it a little earlier than normal, but there traditionally is an opportunity for the public to weigh in on the governor's bill as introduced.
So when are you carrying the bill on the floor?
We don't know for sure, but we're hoping March 12th, 14th, yeah, something in there.
So normally we do this before we start packaging and putting together our final mega bill. We have this hearing.
Amy?
Certainly before you make any adjustments to the bill, you would hear it, yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here today. One of the things that I see in here is the educational payment of 195.9, which is a reduction. This is in 23, a reduction of educational state aid of 195.9. But isn't that really just a accounting change, because they got additional money in 22 of 190 some million in 22 with additional payment of 199.9
I believe. So you're just moving that money to June 30th. Is that really correct? I think that's the way I want to make sure I understand that.
Amy?
Senator, if I could clarify what pager you're referring to.
Well, I'm looking at the 190, I believe it's 199.5, all SGF to eliminate delayed state aid payments. That's on your first page. And then you come back over to, on 23, you're reducing the educational state aid, 195.9. So, but isn't that just to move that to June 30th?
Amy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, you're adding an additional payment in the current year. So then that would show as a decrease in 23.
So if we do this, if we do make that payment in June 30th, we won't hear again that we're behind in educational payments to the schools. We hope.
Amy?
I hate to predict the future. So this would catch you up from a previous action, yes.
Other questions? Seeing none, if you'd like to, I guess we'll finish this one and then we'll have you back up. Oh, this is both of them, okay. Yep, I see you, 422, yep. Any other questions on either one, 422 or 444?
Just a point of interest.
Senator McGinn?
If you put the 5% back for the legislature, you'll go from $88.66 to $93 and a penny. Just letting you know in case you're hurting.
I think Senator Hawk is very interested. Thank you, Amy. Committee, that completes our work for today. There's nothing else. We are adjourned. Thank you.